What up, y'all? If you're new here, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. My name is Anthony Changes, and I am a huge Scream fan, and this is my spoiler-free review of Scream 7. Let's get into it. Today, I'll be rating the movie on 7 different elements: plot, character development, Ghostface style and skill level, suspense, opening scene, motive, and nostalgia. Without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the plot. The plot, I have to rate a solid 9 out of 10. The film does a fantastic job at showcasing Sydney as a mother who's struggling to shield her daughter Tatum from her past. Supporting characters' return was decently done. Gail, Chad, and Mindy all served a purpose, but I will say that Chad and Mindy's return felt a bit forced. It's almost like they were trying to bridge the gap between the OG fans and the new fans from 5 and 6. But more on that later. The pacing of this film is extremely fast, and while the plot of the movie is extremely interesting given the focus on Stu Macher, I will say that the fast-paced nature of the film did have a negative impact on character development. Now, character development, I have to rate a 6 out of 10. I'm going to say as much as I can about character development without spoiling anything, but honestly, outside of the OGs, the only character to really experience any sort of development would be Tatum, Sydney's daughter. Most of the deaths happen before we really know anything about these characters, so there's very little in the realm of emotional stake. Scream and Scream 2 did a much better job at really developing the emotional ties to these characters before they were. But with Scream 7, a lot of these characters just seem to be used as cannon fodder. With that, I will say that these killings are brutal. And for that, I have to rate Ghostface's skill, style, and overall savagery a very solid 10 out of 10. The Ghostface that Sydney and company are up against in this film is top tier. Between their hand-to-hand combat, how clever they were with taunting victims, and the overall speed with which they attacked, I must say that this is by far the most menacing and frightening we've seen Ghostface be across all 7 films. One death takes place off a camera, and another one seems a bit unintentional. If you know, you know. But you do get the sense that Ghostface is out to cause trauma. Another thing that I have to give them kudos for is the way Ghostface fades in and out of the backgrounds. This definitely adds a very solid touch to the suspense of the film, which I have to rate a 7 out of 10. Now, with the suspense and me rating it a 7 out of 10, I will say that there are just a handful of jump scares, many of which were featured in the previews. But where this film shines as far as suspense is concerned is the way in which Ghostface moves. Ghostface is very calculated and intentional in their movement. Honestly, it really makes this Ghostface feel prepared. Like I said, the pacing of this film is extremely fast, but there's enough fresh and interesting concepts that really make the rest of the film feel very engaging. Everything outside of the opening scene, which I must rate as a 6 out of 10. Now, I gave the opening scene a 6 out of 10 because I don't think anyone that's seen the previews is going to be completely blown away by the scene. In some ways, it doesn't really feel like a typical Scream opening. I love the opening for Scream 5 and how no one actually died. And honestly, Scream 6's opening was even better. Having a Ghostface take their mask off before we get a title card was absolutely mind-blowing, and it made me feel as though 6 was going to be an amazing movie. And most of it was, up until the point where Quinn died, and then it just kind of fell apart for me. That's a hot take, and we don't have to discuss that just yet. Scream 7's opening is probably tied for last place with Scream 4, which opening I just didn't enjoy. Come for me in the comments if you like. But the only thing that I've rated worse than the actual opening scene is the motive, but not for the reasons that you think. As far as the motive is concerned, I have to give it a 5 out of 10, and I can't really say too much without spoiling anything, but here's what I will say. The motive isn't bad, and neither is the scene where the mask comes off. I do have to give them kudos because the motive is fresh and original. See, the motive is made a little bit more digestible with just how brutal Ghostface is in this film. But because the pacing of this movie is so fast, you really don't feel the motive like you did in previous entries. The characters are so much more developed in previous films that really make the reveal so much more significant and impactful. Now, you do get an explanation in Scream 7, but honestly, the motive just feels kind of lackluster. And no one in the film really gets enough screen time for their motive or death to really feel significant. The motive was original, so I'll give them credit for that, but I do think it could have been executed a little more wisely. Now, for nostalgia, I have to rate nostalgia a 7 out of 10. As you know, Scream has been a long-running franchise for almost 30 years, and this film paid out a ton of fan service. But it didn't feel cheesy. Now, Billy Loomis fans got their fill in Screams 5 and 6, and Stu Macher fans are definitely getting their fill with this one.